Hello, everyone. Mike here with Downtown Makeover. And although I don't normally record podcast style interviews in this format, I thought it was long overdue to sit down with a developer who's willing to be open about the process of building and constructing in Reno and get a perspective on the challenges of downtown as well and what it would take to jumpstart development again. Today, I've got Marmot Properties, and we're going to talk about what it's like to really build something in this city and also dive into downtown. This is going to be a real conversation, so let's go. So let's start at the beginning. Who are you, and how does someone end up as a real estate developer in Reno, Nevada? My first actual memory from you was from Pizzava and Hukava as a business owner.
Yeah, absolutely. My name is Batuhan Zadeh. Everybody calls me Bot. It makes life a little easier. I own Marmot Properties. So we're not just developers, we're general contractors. We're licensed GCs in the state of Nevada. We GC all of our own in house projects as well as clients. We're also real estate brokers. So we have 14 agents on the team that are licensed helping people transact, buy and sell properties. We are licensed property managers, although we're doing that a lot less now. We offloaded most of our portfolio. But so we're vertically integrated. The projects that we take on, we or one of our brokers finds, we underwrite it internally. We're the general contractors doing the construction. We're the property managers doing the leasing and the property management of our properties. We also do the same services for our clients as well. So if somebody wants to do projects in Reno, they generally have to find all these different trades to go hire, but we're kind of all in one. So we bring the lenders to the table. We do all the contracts, the underwriting, the planning for the project. So we're kind of a one-stop shop for people. I did start as a business owner here locally. I had a few businesses. I think at my peak, I had 60 or 70 employees in the food and beverage industry between Hukaba and Pizzava and some other stuff. My family still owns food and beverage. I'm not so much in that anymore. I'm just focused on real estate. But I essentially started in real estate as a real estate broker in residential real estate and then gravitated towards commercial, which I found a better home in for myself,
What?
and then became a broker
Sure.
and a developer.
What made you want to transition from being a business owner to I want to build stuff?
Oh man, business ownership is really difficult. It's running an army of people in, especially food and beverage. It's one of the hardest things. And I think my goal wasn't to grow the biggest retail store possible. That just wasn't, maybe at one point it was, but over time I realized, hey, I think working with business owners is better. I'd rather help other business owners build their businesses because it's one of the toughest paths I think anybody could ever take in life is to go and decide to open their own business. And there was just so much burning in that fire as I opened those businesses. I wasn't super burnt out by it, but definitely saw better paths, which I found in real estate.
Tell us about Marmot Properties. What are some of the projects that you guys have completed, just so, or if in case our viewers, our listeners are not really familiar with what you've done in town?
Yeah, so we're mostly downtown Midtown. We do office, retail, industrial, multifamily. We haven't done residential in a long time. We did that for a while when the markets allowed it. Right now, it's such a difficult market to get any sort of housing off that we don't really touch it, at least for ourselves. We still do rent remodels and new construction for clients, but we just don't syndicate any deals in the residential space ourselves. But the most notable recently is Junkie Building. We're finishing that off now. We just got two of our tenants with certificate of occupancies, and the four should be coming by next month. So we'll have that whole building online. We own a lot of notable projects in town, in downtown Midtown at least. We like doing historic buildings. We like doing ground up. We've done a ton of multifamily here, ground up. If you're driving through Midtown and you see any of these colorful buildings, it's hard to miss.
I remember my own introduction to Marmot Properties actually was the house next door to me was the very first property that Marmot Properties purchased before moving here from Idaho. They bought it off the courthouse steps for about 100 grand, renovated it, added a basement apartment, and then sold it a few years ago for almost 600 grand. And then they applied this formula to dozens and dozens of properties in my neighborhood, buying up little cracked inns, renovating them, and then renting or selling them. And I say they because this was before your direct involvement with Marmot Properties when it was the Radin brothers, the early days. Some might call that gentrification, and others might call it reducing crime and eliminating blight. What are your thoughts on the revitalization of my direct area, that area west of Wells and east of Virginia?
Sure, we have not done that in a while. That was definitely before my time, but those guys, Eric and Brian, and Gary, they're my mentors. They crushed it. They came to Reno to basically do just that. Just take these rough neighborhoods and make them look nicer. And you're right, the prices do come up, but it allows for so much opportunity when those transitions take place. It brings in people into those neighborhoods that otherwise would not have come. And I think the key word that you used was crack den. And, I think
They were.
not every rundown house is a crack den. Some of them are, and a lot of them that they did wasn't distressed property owners. These were multi-unit property owners that just didn't care about their properties. They were just land banking them. So the properties that they bought weren't from distressed families. They were from out-of-state property owners that just didn't care about the neighborhood or the parcel like we do. We live in these neighborhoods. I live in that neighborhood that you're speaking of. So to us, we see it as building our neighborhood up and giving people an opportunity. Like we have so many people that want to do more in Reno. They want to do more artistic stuff. They want to do better businesses. And it's just, we can't get there unless we make these neighborhoods look nicer at least. And if we don't do it, the repercussions of not doing it are just too great. So there's a Japanese proverb, if somebody can do it, I can do it. If no one can do it, I must do it. And in these neighborhoods, we just don't have enough. Now, Midtown looks great now, but back then, there was nobody touching these houses, and it was so risky. And if it
Yes.
wasn't risky, anybody could have done it, and nobody did it. So that's how we look at it, is we took a risk because these are the neighborhoods we live in. And for some projects, the risk paid off. For other projects, they were terrible. They financially did not pay off, and instead they lost money. So these are risks that we take, but money is not the number one concern when we do these projects. It's the neighborhoods that we work in.
Sure. So why Reno? You could take your capital and essentially build in Phoenix, Boise, Las Vegas. What kept you here doing this in Reno specifically? Do you see Reno as an underrated market, or is it getting harder to work here compared to a few years ago?
Oh, if I did this for the money, I'd be and still lived in Reno, I'd be in USA Parkway doing concrete tilt up like most other sensible developers are doing. Doing business in downtown Midtown is doing business on hard mode. It's very difficult. You have really old properties. You have just changing conditions all the time. It's expensive to do business here. The properties that you're buying are so expensive compared to these other markets that like your arbitrage is really risky. You're taking these really large mortgages on. We do it in Reno because we love Reno. We have Tahoe, we have Burning Man, we have the people here. The beauty of Reno, the lifestyle here is really hard to replicate anywhere else. I couldn't see myself doing this anywhere else. Even if you paid me more money, I couldn't. And there's just so many opportunities out there that we just won't take because we love Reno.
Yeah, I love Reno too. So let's go ahead and tackle something head on. There's this default assumption that developers are the bad guys, even though really they're responsible for every single thing constructed in a city, from schools to hospitals to apartments, tract homes, depending on where you're at, and that you're all connected, greasing the right city council members, getting sweetheart deals. When you hear that, what's your honest reaction to the general public perception of developers?
I think I would have to agree that not every developer is good. There are some developers, I would never name names, but there are some that are bad for our community here locally. They don't live here. They have no stake in the game other than spreadsheets that they look at. They don't look at us as people. They don't look at our demographics. They just don't have the same skin in the game as the local ones do. So you can't say all developers are good or all developers are bad. That's just not a thing. Um, and I hate that there are politics involved. Like we don't donate to politicians at Marmot. We have politician friends that they are stakeholders to decision making here. So we want to make sure they're educated on what's happening in the trenches of development. So we talk to them. We don't financially contribute to them. And it's terrible that financial consideration sometimes plays a role in these decision making processes. For downtown Midtown, I don't see that as an issue because I don't know what you could gain by donating to a politician in downtown Midtown. Those things generally happen in rural areas where there's either some utility problems or there's some entitlement issues. I haven't seen any that I could recall of somebody donating money in downtown Midtown and getting what they want from politicians. That just, you either have a project stand on its own feet or it kind of goes to crap. I don't think there's anything much that a politician can do for you.
Yeah, I think people overestimate the amount of power an actual politician has, maybe compared to city staff. And perhaps it's just a few bad developers out there kind of giving all developers a bad name because it's always when a project falls through that you hear comments like that.
Well, there are, I mean, in rural areas, you could like these politicians can make a big impact on projects in areas where you need a zoning amendment or you need a conditional use permit. You don't really have that in downtown. It's more so business owners would have to somehow entice a politician to do something like if they're getting a CUP or something. But for developers, there isn't much you could do. They're the really large developers that kind of try to get tax incentives and I support those. I mean, I think there's a lot of bad light on developers seeking tax incentives,
Sure.
like the TIF funding, for example.
Yeah, we'll get into that in a
Yeah,
little
okay,
bit too
great.
here. Let's talk about what a developer actually puts on the line before a single shovel goes in the ground. Walk me through the real financial exposure studies, site control, design, entitlements, all of it before you know if the project will actually happen.
Sure. So the real risk that a developer takes is when they actually close the purchase of the property and they're collateralizing a mortgage with their own personal guarantee. That's a majority of the projects happen like that. In Nevada, it is state law that if you are taking a construction loan, there has to be personal guarantees involved. So the real risk comes when you close on the purchase, but there are financial risks before that as well. And there's a lot of opportunity cost risk as well. So if a developer was intending to do a project somewhere, they first find the parcel, and that's when the due diligence begins. And I'll use an example. Let's say we're working with a quarter of an acre downtown. And if you're intending to build a building there, you first find the seller, you guys negotiate terms, not just price, but all the other terms like, hey, how many days do I get in due diligence before my deposit goes non-refundable? Or, hey, what type of inspections I'm going to do and what contingencies and recourse I have on things. But those inspections get really costly, especially if you're building a new building there. Your lender wants to know if the dirt is clean. You have a phase one, a phase two, a geotech report. You have all the reports that you have to get from your not just the land inspectors, but your engineers, your architect, and these due diligence costs a lot. Like if you're building even a four-story building in downtown, your permit design between all the engineers and such is north of 200 grand. So if you don't end up purchasing that property because something happened, like your lender didn't come through or your investor fell out, you're out that money. And generally, that's the developer's personal funds that they put on the line. And then the real risk comes is if for that four-story building, you have a $10 million loan. Well, you're on the line for $10 million. Where if for any reason you don't pay that mortgage payment or you don't perform on the project on the right timelines, the bank has the right to call that loan and force liquidate you, which in most, if not all scenarios, wipes your entire down payment. So either your own personal funds or your investor funds, and then you are on the line for anything north of that. So if the bank doesn't recover all their loan amount, your personal guarantee covers that. And these are the risks that developers take. And nobody should feel bad for developers. These are, this is our job. And like if somebody messes up on their job, they should be held responsible. But it's a hard pill to swallow, especially when you're looking at all these assumptions that you have going into a project where how do I confirm these assumptions? And if I don't, what happens to me? It's pretty stressful.
Yeah, definitely sounds stressful. Speaking of risks and projects falling through, in a lot of cases, it's not necessarily the developer who holds up housing or development, it's the actual government process itself. Have you experienced that firsthand?
I mean, everybody that has to go through City Hall experiences this, and it changes every year. So, like, I remember pulling permits 5, 6 years ago where it was just so easy. You would walk into City Hall, you'd go to second floor, everybody's high fiving, everybody's happy. It was a totally different time, and then, pulling permits now is significantly different. And just these processes, this regulation that we've added into development, and not just real estate developers, we're in the same buckets as business owners. So whether you're a coffee shop owner or, general contractor or a developer doing a project, you're kind of facing the same scrutinies almost from the same exact departments. So yeah, it has significantly gotten harder.
Let's get into that actual process. Walk me through permitting from the start. You've got a site, you've got a plan, your first permit application. What does that journey look like? And then for a listener who's never been through this process, what's a reasonable timeline and what are you actually experiencing in Reno?
Well, let's use the junkie building as an example because I just did an investor update a few days ago and I have the timelines right in my head. So we bought the junkie building and the permit design. So until we submit it to the city, took about 7 months. And in this time, we had to solve for a lot of interesting things, like, for example, sprinklers, how to hot tap into the street, the structural integrity of the building. Now that we're adding all this occupancy to the building, to get structural engineer reports and letters to submit along with your permits.
So
Uh,
you do all that even before contacting the city.
Oh,
Mhm.
absolutely,
Yeah.
yeah, that takes a while, and you can contact the city, and we did contact the city, which didn't work out so well because essentially you could do these pre-development meetings where they bring all the departments to the table, and you can ask them questions all at the same time where, you have fire, you have, building, you have all these different departments at the city that are gonna review your permits, and you can ask them questions of, "Hey, is my zoning right? Hey, fire, is, my egress okay? Do you guys see anything?" And they have the right to essentially say, "Hey, you should watch out for this," and it's an informative meeting, it's not a formal one. But still, you don't have to do that. You're mostly dealing with your architects and engineers at the time, and then whatever other stakeholder you have. So we had already pre-selected our tenants, or at least most of them. So we were working with the tenants as well on, "Hey, where do you want your bathrooms? How do you want your HVAC?" Et cetera. So that takes a little bit of time too, but it took about 7 months to submit the permits, and then it took 6 months to approve the permits, which I think that portion could have been faster. We did hit some issues that we didn't know about. I mean, it's hard to get into that topic, but we submitted a permit set that they significantly wanted changed, and that took a while. And after approval, now that we're getting our C of Os, it took about 12 months in construction. So all in all, it was about to go from closing the sale of the building, and we were in contract for about 3 months. So all in all, it took about almost 3 years to bring that building back to life from what it was.
When you say that they had significant changes to the permitting, do you think that those were valid changes or that you would normally go through with the permitting process?
I've done similar projects and I have not hit those same issues. I guess that doesn't matter. You could put 5 permits in and get totally 5 different, very different responses. Um, the for that scenario, we had submitted 1 permit and the city wanted 6 different permits because there was 6 different tenants with all different use cases, and we own the building. We're the general contractors. We were improving our own building, but they decided to say, "Hey, the construction is going to determine the use of the space, and you have to get all new separate permits." So we had to go back to all of our engineers, even though they had approved that in pre-development meeting and said, "Oh yeah, permits look great, submitted, let's do it." They wouldn't even accept the permits until we split them. So going back to engineers and redesigning everything was extremely painful and expensive. It took at least 4 or 5 months out of the project. We tried to talk to them about it, but I mean, I understand where they're coming from. They're reading a code book, and that's how they're interpreting what the code book says. But it was not fun to deal with that at the time.
Totally understand that. So let's talk about fees. Most people have no idea how much it costs just to get permission to build something. I once had a developer tell me the permit value that's listed on a building permit, which is something I often report on Downtown Makeover, is a tiny fraction of what it actually costs to build something. So, what are we actually talking about for a typical project in Reno, and how do those fees compare to what you might have seen in other Nevada cities or cities out of state? Are the fees the worst part, or is it more the time those fees buy you?
Honestly, fees are fees. I'm not like super anti fee. for the Junkie building. So we bought that building for a little north of 2 million, like 2.1 million, and then we put about 3.5 million to 4 into it in that range. And all in all, between all municipalities, so not just City of Reno, but Tumwa included, it was about $350,000 in permit fees. And these are traffic impactment, schooling fees. These are your water fixture fees that we had to pay. Tumwa alone was like 150 grand of it, at least. And so the fees are fees. I am totally fine, and most developers are fine paying fees. I don't know many developers that are against fees. I mean, the fees are going up for rightful reasons, I think. Like sewer is getting more expensive, and we want better schools, and like the fees aren't the issue. If they could just make the process better, or if they could not treat us as enemies, or just like
Yeah,
if we can make up on another front, the fees are nothing. I don't think fees are the ones that put the projects out.
gotcha.
It's just your holding costs are more expensive than the fees. Like
Sure.
the holding cost for that building alone is at least 50 grand a month between mortgage, insurance costs, etc., and then the delays. So just like that 5 month delay alone was like almost 300 grand for us. So
Wow.
if the timelines could go better, and if the process was easier, the fees are not the issue.
That's one thing I've heard from other developers in our market who won't necessarily go on record about it because they're still, developing projects, is that the hardest part isn't really any single rule. It's more the inconsistency. Is that your experience? And how do you even plan around that or write a pro forma when the rules feel like they can change midway through the project?
Well, as a developer, you want to underwrite correctly. And that's the most critical line in your project is when you're looking at your spreadsheet to know your timelines, your holding costs, everything has to be as accurate as possible. And when you have this variable of uh like there are many times where after we bought the building, we have the mortgage that we're paying for. We had an assumption to do something. And we go to the city, and instead of saying a yes if, they say no. And that's the hardest part is like sometimes if they came to us and said, yeah, you could do what you want to do if you do XYZ, that would be great because then we have a roadmap. But a lot of the times that these developers, including myself, when we go there, it's a straight up no. And then to get a path out of it, it feels like a battle. It feels like we have to play politics or like it's like, guys, I already own the building. I had done this project before. That guy did that same thing. That guy did the same thing. When did these rules change? What happened here? And the excuse that they use is, we have IBC code. It just updated to 2024, this International Building Code, and it's written in one way, and how someone interprets it is totally up to them almost. Like even though it's supposed to be black and white, and like it's supposed to, and there's a commentary as well to the IBC written by the same guys that hey, you're supposed to interpret it this way. The commentary is not code. The IBC is the code. It has happened to me very recently as well, where they'll read the commentary. It says exactly what we're saying, and then they're like, "Nope, we're choosing not to interpret it that way. We're going to interpret it this way." So it's kind of gambling almost when you take these projects on, and then when you hit that permit desk, it's not just I think the biggest guys that get hurt by this are the tract home builders. They get hit so hard with utilities and such, and for us more urban developers, the battle is a little bit different than what they're dealing with, but it's mostly the same of just overregulation and legislative stuff.
Reno's been updating its master planning zoning codes over the past few years, in a campaign called Reimagine Reno, I think it is. That should make things a little bit more predictable and developer friendly. In your experience in the regions of Reno that you develop, has that helped?
Gosh, that's such a broad question. I mean, as far as like zoning goes, it hasn't really impacted us too much. It does help when we're increasing the density in these parcels because sometimes the project doesn't pencil at 4 units, but it pencils at 10. So it unlocks that parcel and it unlocks bringing 10 units in, but you just can't because you're limited up to 4. So up density has been helping a lot of developers and helping the community bring
Yeah.
more units in.
And I think that would mostly what I would be referring to are changes that would prevent you from having to go through a very expensive conditional use permit process?
Yeah, changing zoning, if you fit the box, it's not difficult, right? So there's two different types of zoning changes, basically. One is the really basically impossible one, and it's spot zoning, where if your adjacent parcels don't share the zoning that you're trying to become, like, good luck. That's extremely difficult. But if the zoning of your adjacent parcel is the same of what you're trying to become, it's not super difficult unless you have a massive project that really impacts the community and you're just a guy that people don't know and they're just opposing you because they're scared of what you want to do. But we've done CUPs, we've done zoning changes. It's as long as you fit in that box and your project is kosher and you're not like negatively impacting the neighborhood too much, they fly by. It's not that difficult. But the zoning hasn't been so much of an issue. I think the city does a good job with planning. It's like, take downtown, for example. Like, it's not zoning that's holding it back. Like,
Yeah,
you can't change
it's
the zoning
pretty
and
much an open world book. If you want to
yeah.
build something downtown, you don't even need parking nowadays. So
Yeah, in Midtown, it's probably a little bit more limiting, but it's still like there's if you want projects, there's projects. It's not like in Midtown, that's not the issue.
So let's talk about downtown specifically, since after all, that is what my platforms are mostly about. Anyone who walks down Virginia Street can see, the vacant storefronts, shuttered buildings, surface parking lots where there used to be at least something there. As a developer, when you look at that, what are you actually seeing? Is it opportunity? Is it a warning sign? Are these vacant properties cheap enough to make a deal pencil out, or has land pricing just completely disconnected them from the actual economic reality of what you can build?
Sure. So as developers, we don't just work off of like feelings or vibes. Uh, the spreadsheets have to pencil. So for a lot of the buildings downtown, if you gave me the building for free, I could not do a profitable project. So that is pretty hard to do when, you have this downtown corridor. It's very difficult for business owners to survive. Most of these residential towers are retirees that don't really visit these businesses. And the people living from the outside of downtown, if you ask them, oh, do you go downtown much? They just don't. We don't have the traffic that we need yet. And we will one day, but it's just so much blight, vacant buildings, and like we don't really have a competitive chance for these business owners. We've done a few projects downtown, and every single time, like we have a handful of successful business owners, and then most just don't get the sales in.
Right.
And we're not in the business of kicking tenants out. So we have multiple tenants that we have one tenant that hasn't paid rent in almost 3 years. And if we kick them out, who are we going to put in? We don't have a tenant behind them, and we want a fighting chance for them. They're there, they're putting sweat equity in. And so I think downtown is basically controlled by it's three landlords, and we all know their names.
Yeah.
And I understand their position, and I wish they would just sell their buildings. But even if they wanted to sell their buildings for a cheap price, it just doesn't really work that well. And it's kind of just a waiting game for them. They're land banking these buildings and waiting for something to happen. For one of those landlords, I just wrote, our construction team they they got some public funds that they had to use, and a portion of that was for exterior facade, and we sent them 3 bids, and it was like $1 million a building. And they were like, "Oh, whoa." And they even designed it. They got architects, they did all the work. I don't know if they're gonna move on it. I understand their concerns of, "Hey, if I did this work, like, is a tenant gonna come and pay the rent that the building needs for this expense to justify itself?"
So, why do you think so many downtown property owners are just perfectly content to sit on their vacant buildings and do nothing? Like, what is their calculation that they're making that we should understand? Is it appreciation speculation? Is that their holding costs are so low that there's just no pressure to do anything?
So it's a combination of a few things. One, if they did wanna do something, it's really expensive. So, like, to help them get off their ass, it's a big ask financially for them. Now, if they sold some buildings, they could use that money to fund other buildings. Like, there's ways they can do it if they had to. If you put a gun to their head, they could renovate their buildings, but they also don't wanna lose money. So, uh, I think for them, they're waiting for downtown to get better.
Gotcha.
And when it pencils for them to do those projects. And really, when they can bring better tenants in, that they could do these projects. But the tenants that we're bringing downtown, these are our local business owners. The ones that are not local, they don't have to walk downtown to not want to sign a lease downtown. Just the demographics don't work.
Sure.
Between crime rates, income levels, age, demographics, etc., we're just not on the map for downtown to get these larger businesses to come in. So we're kind of relying on our local business owners, and their pockets are a bit smaller than those big guys. They can't just go into a space and go bring the space up to code. It doesn't work that way. Like for them to, before they even bring their furniture in, there has to be hundreds of thousands of dollars spent just within their box, within that space, for that building to pass code. And this isn't like City of Reno code. This is like national, international business code that they have to pass, especially if you're triggering change of uses. Like if it's going from an office space to a retail, or if there's any sort of use changes, that triggers full, almost ground up new construction building code. So I think that's kind of the chicken or egg right now. I wish they were more incentivized to do something, but even if they tried to sell it, I mean, they're still getting money. They're not
Sure.
selling it for free. They just don't feel it's financially smart for them to sell it right now.
So let's talk about incentivization versus penalization. There are some legislative tools that could pass that would allow cities to push vacant property owners off the sideline, like a vacant building tax or a land tax, basically penalizing people for holding idle property. What's your take on that as a solution for downtown Reno? Is it too aggressive or is it actually what's needed?
I'm for it, personally. I don't know how the metrics of it works. Like, this is not Russia. People have property rights, so there are laws against this, and I think the main one that they refer to is the Dillon's Law, for state of Nevada.
Yeah, it'd have to be passed at the legislative
Yeah,
level
correct.
for.
So this is a state law that would have to update. But as far as, I mean, I would support it absolutely. I think where we could really disincentivize is, I think the inspectors are going after more occupied buildings than they are unoccupied buildings. When this building is vacant, they're not held up to safety, life and safety requirements. These buildings are like tinderboxes. If like a fire went out, they don't have an alarm, they don't have sprinkler systems. There's no bird dog inside like any person. Like if I have a vacant building, my insurance charges me more money because the building is vacant because I don't have anybody in there to report if there's a fire or not. So through construction, when the building is vacant, it's not just because it's going through construction, but because there's nobody inside and there's no active fire alarm or fire sprinkler. So there are instances where, hey, your building poses a higher risk. And for us to underwrite that risk for the community and for the neighboring, hey, here's this fee for you because, it's risky for us to have your building be vacant and not up to code. So it's practiced in the industry to do that. I wouldn't be opposed to that. I do think we have to be careful because I've seen many instances where, as we're creating strategies to reactivate these buildings, those same systems that we're creating are being used against occupied buildings and people who are trying to do good business. And that's
Sure.
where we have to be really
Yeah.
careful.
And then on the flip side, there's the incentive approach, tax abatements, TIF financing through the redevelopment agency, facade improvement grants. Do you think these incentives actually move the needle? Is there a specific incentive structure that you think would actually catalyze new development in downtown Reno that doesn't currently exist?
To answer your first question, I think TIF funding and facade programs are amazing. I think if you looked at it logically, they generate a lot more money and value for the community than they spend. And that's where I think the main argument comes from. Like, hey, this isn't free money that's being given out. This is money that's being used as a financial instrument to activate neighborhoods and bring more money in for the city. And to think otherwise, your argument is logic. And so for people that are opposed to these programs, you're fighting logic because if you looked at the numbers, those programs work. Yes, there are programs where or properties where it hasn't worked, like I think bowling stadium, for example.
Yeah.
There's I think those would not come to life today. I think at the time it made a lot of sense. I think if that project was proposed today, I think we're a lot smarter than that now. But to use examples like that to discontinue any program or to disincentivize that program is silly because the facade grant, for example, even though it's improving landlords' properties, those improvements are being used by business owners, especially downtown where it's desperately needed. Like, you could be a business owner that wants to spend, 500 grand to open a business downtown, but if the facade is not good or if your neighboring buildings' facades aren't good, your building and your business is not going to do well. So I do not like putting money into the pockets of landlords that don't have the intention of reactivating their buildings. I'm against that as well. But just looking at it logically, I would love to see this money go into their pockets. And I know for a fact it's going to come back because their property taxes are going to increase right off the bat. As soon as they do the construction, Washoe County sees that you pulled permits and boom, your taxes go up. So I know it's coming back. And the percentage return on that money coming back is significantly higher than if we put that money into some bonds or treasuries or something. And it's reinvesting into the community, even though it's going into that landlord's building, somebody else is going to own that building. And that money is going to stay in the community. That money is not going out of the country or out of the city. It's going to go into that building and stay in that building. And that building is a part of the community. So I do like that. As far as if we had some other programs, I think it's above my pay grade, but I think the biggest uh the most difficult part for a developer to take a project off right now is finding investors for your projects. Like, we do use some of our own money, but a majority of our money comes from investors. And right now, it's not the right time to get projects off. The national economics isn't amazing. We have all this political turmoil. We have wars nationally that just like one day it's good, one day it's bad. Super unpredictable times. So these investors looking to place capital is looking for really big opportunities, like low risk, high return. And that's not what Reno development is. Reno development is like lower return, higher risk. So if there was a way we could solve that issue somehow, and I'm having some conversations with people around that where if, then we somehow use, I don't know. I'm not sure yet. We don't know where we're gonna go with it. I don't wanna but yeah, I think there could be plenty more tools available. It's just the idea is easy to come up with, and then to actually make that idea work is the difficult part.
Gotcha. And speaking of the RDA, Reno's RDA has historically been a little bit toothless because it's been a debt payer for the last 15 plus years. What could a more empowered RDA actually do for a developer trying to work in downtown Reno?
Man, the RDA, I mean, for local guys, it's helpful, but I think their main purpose is to should be to bring outside developers in. And I think they do a great job at that, where like to find that capital that's needed to go into downtown Reno from local investors is not easy. So we have to bring some developers from out of town, and some of them are good and some of them are bad. But at the end of the day, as long as the capital comes in and improves the land or the building, that's good in my book. And then we could talk about, hey, let's make sure this doesn't impact the community in a negative way. But I think RDA is an amazing resource for these outside developers to come in and just shake their hand first. Hey, before you go to the building department or business license or code enforcement or anybody else, come shake the hand of a smiling person that's genuinely interested in your business here in the city. That's what I see the main purpose of the RDA is being a welcoming board, a committee of for outside developers.
So you would support extending the life of the RDA districts then? Because I think RDA 2 is set to expire in about 10 years.
Right. So I guess let's talk about what the districts do. Any projects in these districts, when they increase the property taxes, that increase in property taxes goes to the district for them to use in their projects or how they deem that it should be used. So extending it means we keep the property taxes in these neighborhoods that goes to the general funds the same, and then whatever north of any new development coming in that increases those taxes, whether it's an RDA project or not, would go to the RDA. I am totally in favor of this, mainly because I think the RDA doesn't go spend your money in Dubai.
Yeah.
They spend it here in Reno, and they build these neighborhoods, this urban core that we have. And I think that's where people forget a lot is, hey, downtown Midtown is an urban core. This is not supposed to be some rural land for you to have your quiet, peaceful moments. This is for the hustle bustle, the bars, restaurants, the tattoo shops, the just active community. And I think the district's funds are used only for developing these.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be used for anything else. It should only be used for improving and building new buildings.
Yeah, yeah, totally agree with that. So if I give you a magic wand, if you could change three things about Reno's development environment right now, whether it's permitting, planning, downtown policy, or midtown policy, whatever they could be, what three things would you pick that you think would move the needle the most?
I mean, I think number one, this is not just for the development community, this is for the business community as well, the business owners. It would be just general customer service at the second floor of Reno. Uh, it's really painful when we walk in there and like we're treated as an enemy almost. I have a feeling I know what happened and how we got there. Uh, but if we just like if you ask any of the politicians or the city of Reno staff, hey, are we pro business? They would shake your hand and go, yeah, absolutely, we're pro business. Bring your business here. We'd love doing business with you guys until it comes time to actually do business. And then it's an extremely difficult obstacle to get past to do business. And then if you go to these business owners and said, hey, is City of Reno pro business? They would look at you like you're joking with them. Like, what? You think City of Reno is pro business? They want to kill my business.
Yeah.
They're going out of their ways to kill my business. So I think we need to come out, like whether the mayor or some of the council members, everybody needs to come out and say, hey guys, at the city of Reno, we are pro business. If any person comes to you intending to do business in the city of Reno, you need to help them. You can't treat them like an enemy. You can't treat them like they're like risking people's lives. You have to help them get to a yes and stop blocking them.
Do you,
And
do you think elected officials actually understand what developers go through, or is there a gap?
oh, I don't want to get myself in trouble here. Um,
Not too much trouble.
well, like let's look at council members, right? So these guys have full-time day jobs. And then this council position is an extra position in their lives. So they have their personal family lives, their like actual work that they do, and then they have this city council position. And then in their position, a lot of their time goes to like silly things. Like, I mean, either like silly positions raised that they just have to argue, or like their future political career with, ambitions of getting reelected or a different position. They don't have that much time to go and make a real impact that, or at least for developers and business owners or urban small boutique developers and business owners. And even if they did, I'm not sure how much they could get done. The way I don't think they're the ones blocking business owners. Uh, I mean, we could talk about kind of how we got here. This is what my hypothesis is from just being in the trenches for so long and just seeing everything evolve. During COVID, we got these ARPA funds. We got a lot of funds where basically, if you didn't use it, you lose it type of funds from the federal government for local
Mhm.
municipalities. The easiest way to use these funds was labor. So I remember when I first started in Reno developing and even being a business owner, the city hall was like only a few floors of government, and then everything else was private businesses. Like we're talking about, God knows how 10 or 14 stories of a building.
Yeah.
Now the whole thing is city hall, the whole thing. And like we went from like 12 assistants to like 34, some outrageous numbers. There's positions there I've never seen before, I've never heard of before. Where did this position come from? And so we overhired so much. And then, of course, these aren't sustainable. And these employees don't just come with a salary, but they also come with PERS and benefits and such. And now, after seeing double digit plus labor cost growths, it didn't just increase the expenses, which I'm fine. I think I should preface this that anybody that works at the city of Reno, I respect them greatly. I think they all love the city of Reno. They could be working anywhere else, but they're working within our city. And there's an opportunity cost for them to be here rather than anywhere else. So I'm I'm very appreciative of the public servants in that city hall. Uh, the problem that we got wasn't just cost associated with the amount of labor that we have. It's the processes that came with those people. A lot of those people came from big cities, and like these aren't local Reno people. So, most are, but the significant ones in these new significant positions were brought in from the outside, and they brought their regulations with them. And like before, you could submit a permit and get a friendly face that like, "Hey man, I know this would kill your project, so like let's help you get there. And like I think this is the path that we do it, and if you follow this, you're good." Those don't exist anymore. They have to live by the book and almost like forcibly have to make your life harder because if they do favors for you, they could get risk getting laid off. And that's kind of the pressure that these like city employees are facing right now is in these like attempts of cost cutting, they're being pressured to like do everything by the book. And they're genuinely worried that if they do any favors for people, that somebody in their department is going to say something to somebody and then they're going to get fired. And at the same time, these departments, with the pressure of being shrunk, they are trying to justify their existence. So, like, I'm sure, the finance team goes to them and says, "Hey guys, like, this was your budget for last year. We have to cut this budget by XYZ." And then these departments have to fight back and say, "Hey, look at all the issues that we're dealing with. Look at all the backed up stuff. Look at all these, things that people are trying to do that's against IBC, that's against life and safety. You're going to get the city sued, all these things." And so when you submit a permit, they almost can't just stamp it and let you go. That's what it feels like. They have to generate work. And I'm not sure if their performance is tracked, like their emails sent or calls made or whatever it is. But I could feel the genuine pressure for these guys. Like when I look at them in the eye, they like want to help me or they want to like help the business owners, but they're like, "Dude, I don't know what to do. I don't know how to help you. I'm gonna get in trouble. I'm gonna get fired. I have a family." So we've created these pressure on these guys. And some of their communicate like there's a few of them with bad communication skills. Like their intentions are good, but they come off as like really like hard asses almost. And like I like those guys too, I like all of them. I don't see any of them as enemies. But they're kind of that's where the issues exist is there's so many employees and not enough work almost that like this overregulation that came with it was caused by this. We had way too much staff that came all at the same time during a time where permits were the highest. And I think when they underwrote that, oh, permits are only going to go up. We're only going to get more development. Bring all these people on. Well, now we're stuck with these regulations that are grossly killing the business owners in Reno. Like I have to sit in front of a lot of these people voluntarily that have to I have to shake their hand and go. They talk to me about the issues that they're dealing with. Like, "Hey, I signed this lease and I'm trying to open this business, but I'm stuck. I can't I can't get a business license because they're saying I have to get some change of use or some building permits, and building permit department doesn't help me. They just say go talk with an architect. Like I don't know what to do. What do I do?" And I have to be the bearer of bad news of, "Hey, like this is what the process looks like." Like I'll give you an example right now, Mike.
Yeah.
Let's say you're a single mom. You're opening a salon. You just signed a lease and you need to put one hand sink into place. You just one hand sink. There's a hand sink right behind the wall, right behind it. All you need to do is poke a hole, take the water, connect it. That's all you need. If you want to do that today, first you have to hire an architect. You have to get built with a site plan, index page. There's no commercial easy permits for this. You have to do the full permit set. After you get your architect, you have to get a plumbing engineer to design the water and sewer lines. Some plumbers do it themselves, most don't. And then you have to have a plumber and a contractor. Well, if it's a single trade, a plumber can sign by themselves, but that contractor has to sign these permits. You have to go to TUMWA to get a water will serve letter because you need the water rights to purchase that sink. TUMWA triggers your backflow, which a backflow is a device to keep the water not travel to the opposite way, so back into the municipal. Even if your building has it, now your unit needs it. So now you have to put the backflow in there, and you put the backflow on the plans. You get the water will serve. You have to get the sewer will serve from Reno. You have to get the sewer fixture count sheet. And the whole permit design path, if you got a good team, like if we were to do this for a client, it would take about 6 weeks, 6 to 8 weeks, or because we're the general contractor and we design our own permits for that stuff. But for you to figure out that whole process as, somebody who's never
Just an
been through
average
it,
person. Yeah.
you're looking at like 4 months to design those. And then
That's an expensive sink.
that sink in permitting fees, not just permitting to the city of Reno, that's probably about between Tumwa and City of Reno, you're looking at like 5, 6 grand or so for the water rights, for the inspection review fees, for the permit submittal fees. And then you have your architect and engineers, which is at least another 5 to 10 grand. So you're looking at like 4 months of permitting, about 10 to 15 grand of permitting costs for one day of work, for like a couple hours of work. Like we haven't paved the path to make that process easier for that single mom who just wants a hand sink there. And that example happens so many times, either that exact same one or some variations of it, where it's just a small mom and pop shop who had no idea what they were getting into. They knew what they knew, so they assumed that they'll be fine. And these guys are taking mortgages on their house, HELOCs, they're quitting their jobs, they're using their retirement funds, and they're dying at the footsteps of Reno, of this like this bureaucracy, these blockers that we've created for them. And they're so embarrassed to talk about it because they think that they failed because they weren't good enough or smart enough or fast enough. They think they failed because of that. And they created this generational dark cloud above their parents, themselves, and their kids because they spent so much money and they couldn't make it work, that they're just quiet. They don't talk. So that's kind of where our, like, if you look at our permits that we pulled at in Reno Sella, which is the website, more than half of the all of the permits we pull is pro bono permits for business owners that either has come to us or were sent to us because they're in a pickle and they don't know how to get out of it. And so we try to make it as smooth and as best as possible. We try to value engineer as possible. And sometimes we're seen as the enemy by staff because we're like, oh, dude, you're trying to cut
You mean
corners.
you as the landlord,
No, us as general contractors.
general
Yeah.
contractor?
When for our own buildings, we don't generally let tenants spend money on construction. We build out the whole thing ourselves because uh, they should spend the money on marketing and hiring and training and all that stuff. And we want to do it well as possible. So that's kind of the trade-off that you get when you lease
Yeah.
from our buildings. We try to do as much, if not all, the construction as possible. But for just because our general construction company takes on a lot of business TIs, we get to work with a lot of people.
And that's part of the problem with downtown Reno is their tenant spaces are so unusable that I think the owners are not willing to invest the 3 to 500 plus grand to improve it at least to a place where a small business owner could look at it and say, "Yeah, I can move in there and actually make some money."
Right. Well, if you underwrote like their rental income that they would gain by spending that money, it just doesn't justify for them. So, like, that's how a lot of those landlords look at it. We look at it as buildings valuation just by bringing a tenant in. Like, that building is worth more. So, like, we underwrite it a little differently than those guys. Those guys want like return on investment ASAP, and we're willing to kind of defer that for later. But for those guys, I think if you ask them that same question, they would say, okay, let's say I spent this money on this tenant and this tenant didn't make it. And then now next tenant comes and he wants improvements as well, or he wants something totally different. Like if I have a coffee shop going now and then a bar wants to go in later, and, even though they're similar uses, they're still like when that tenant is negotiating, they're going to want free rent. They're going to want some construction allowance. So they'll spend the money if the right tenant came, but the right tenants aren't coming.
Gotcha. And so there's a couple of last questions. Are you optimistic or pessimistic about downtown Reno in 10 years?
10 years is a long time.
You would
I
think
don't
it's
think
long, but I've been tracking it for 20 years.
Yeah, of
And
course, yeah. If you went on Google Maps and just click, like, history on that top left there and just go back 20 years, it looks almost identical. Um, I I wish it was easier to answer. I think if the right things happen, I would be optimistic. The way it's going right now, I am not. And that's what we're working on is changing. Is like, hey, let's change some of these things and hopefully we'll have a better future. I do see a lot of projects coming online. Like I think movie theaters is like movie theater having a movie theater was cool downtown, but I think the retail stores that are coming and that apartment building across the street from it and like there are projects coming. It's just such a slow growth.
yeah,
Like in 10 years, if we go the same exact speed, it's not going to look that much different. Like I see all these new buildings coming online and they just get lost in the clutter. So I think in 10 years it's going to go up, but extremely slowly.
sure. And if there's a city planner, council member, or a mayor that happens to be listening to this right now, what's the one thing that you would want them to hear?
Oof. I mean, I think we have to. reestablish our ideas of what pro business in Reno means. And not for the sake of like money for the city, that's important as well, but for the sake of the people that are doing business here. Like I would ask them, go talk with your local business owners. Just go walk into any random business and just ask them, hey, has the city hurt you in the last 12 months or 24 months? Has any inspector, has anybody come to you, or have you gone to City Hall and have had like really negative customer service? Have you felt lost? How's your business doing? How is sales doing? Like, go and genuinely ask these questions. What my worry is that they either don't care because like it's that business owner's fault and that business owner will go out and another one will come in and that could make it work. And if that owner doesn't work, then another one will come in. But until someone makes it work, it's fine. And that's what my main worry is. I genuinely think most of them feel that way is if like a business is underperforming or if they're in trouble with the city, it was their fault. And that's what I would want them to do is, hey, just revisit this idea of are we pro business here? Are we helping or hurting our business owners? Are we giving them the right resources that they need? Or what is overregulation? What is the definition of overregulation? Do our do our laws here represent like an LA or a San Francisco or a New York? Should they be a lot less? Because we are still a town where, they joke biggest little city. We are tiny compared to the regulations that we have.
Yeah. On that note, I really appreciate you taking the time to chat with me. I don't often run across developers who are willing to be so open about topics like this. Most of them just tell me offline, and that's one of the reasons I wanted to chat with you is because you're not the only developer who has told me about the trials and tribulations of permitting or development or just the difficulty of developing something in Reno and making it pencil. So,
Can I tell you why?
yes,
I think you
absolutely.
know why as well, but repercussion is a real thing. And when we talk, the parties that disagree with us totally are against us. And like there are going to be people at the city that don't agree with my thoughts. There are going to be I don't think there are any business owners that agree with my thoughts. I think I represent the community pretty well. But when they disagree with you, they look at you like an enemy of the state. They look at you as a greedy developer that's willing to cut corners and life and safety for the sake of profit when we're literally fighting for our lives. I have a gun to my head from tenants, from my contractors, from my banks, from my investors. I try to go fast. I try to go do the best job possible. And we're human. We make mistakes. We've only had our GC license for 3 years. So there's some clerical processes that I miss sometimes. But whenever we hit issues and we ask for help, we get hit with this repercussions of, oh, you're going above our head. Oh, you're going to this person. You're asking for help when I already told you you're breaking this rule and you have to do it this way. And there are times they're right. And then there are times that they're not. And their idea would have cost us hundreds of thousands of dollars. And it's our right to fight for these projects because we have so much on the line. And when we talk out loud, the repercussion is real. And I think it's time to just not worry about that stuff. For any other developers that are out there, like I've been talking with some other developer friends about building like a coalition of some sort where business owners can come to us and say, hey, here's the issue I hit, and this is what happened. And we go in front of council and say, okay, here's 5 examples of business owners that your process destroyed and put out of business. Like, we have to stand up and say some stuff, not
Yeah.
just for ourselves, but for the guy next to us. There's plenty of developers. Like, most developers are friends with each other. We don't look at each other as competition. We share banks, we share insurance agents, we share tenants, we share lenders, and we're all having these same issues. Like, any architect, any engineer, if you brought these guys in a room and said, okay, guys, what's the issue? The There are some people that would listen, but I think most of the people at the city just say, "Hey, this is the process. Stop breaking rules and just go this way." And it's like, "Well, I think your rules are wrong."
I think a coalition like that might actually really help in the city because when it comes down to it, we are just a small city. We're not, 4 million people. And so, again, I really appreciate you coming on, and I'm looking forward to the Junkie Project opening. Do you have any estimated opening dates on that?
Um,
I know it's probably per tenant, but
so Drink Coffee Do Stuff is opening on May 15th. They're the coffee shop. They're amazing. They moved their whole roasting facility headquarters to the Junkie building. So as you walk by, you might smell some amazing coffee.
oh,
Go in and
nice.
have a drink. The Selden Bar is set to open on May 8th. That's a Friday. So that's their first opening.
Very cool.
And they're going to be amazing. I was just in there yesterday. It's going to look awesome. The other tenants, I think the yoga studio is May 15th is what they're shooting for. They haven't had the final inspections, but they should next week, and then we'll have the exact date, and then the other tenants will follow right after them. But I'm hoping everybody opens in May is what we're going for.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I think, thank you for talking with me, and I'm sure we'll have more future chats.
Okay. Thanks so much, Mike. And
No
by the
problem.
way, your work is amazing. I
Oh,
moved to
thank
Reno about 13 years ago, and I saw your posts, and I've been following you for a long time. And I think your journalism is amazing. You don't take money from public, you don't sell ads, you don't take donations. Everything that you do is purely for the public. And I think that's extremely respected. So thanks
well,
for doing that.
well, thank you. You're too kind. All right. Well, that's us signing off.